Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Bayview High School celebrating World Mental Health Day. For today's episode, we have two very special guests who will be talking about something very close to our heart, which is how caregivers and parents can understand their children much more deeper and how we can have a more effective form of communication with them to build bridges in understanding them and in helping them. For that, we have our first guest, Dr. Zainab Zadeh, who's a clinical psychologist with over 20 years of experience. And along with her, we have Fatima Masood, who is an educator with a vast experience in the field of mental health, who currently belongs to VLC, Veritas Learning Circle. So I would like to welcome both of you for today's episode. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having us, Amna.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much for the invite. It's a pleasure to be here. And I congratulate the school and the whole administration for being able to organize this so successfully every year.
Thank you so much. So if we can kind of just reflect on what it is like to be here today, talking about something which we all are so passionate about. So Dr. Zainab, if I ask the theme that we're essentially talking about, what does that mean for you?
Mental health and issues related to mental health. It's been for the last decade or 5-10 years that we've been able to speak about it so openly, especially within the school premises, with parents, with students, with teachers. And it's always very good to get that response, which is sort of a receptive response that we receive from the audience, especially from the school administration and other people who are able to empathize and relate to the issue, which is playing a beautiful role in shedding the stigma related to this whole issue. And I think that's a great contribution. If we've been able to make this contribution in the field, we've actually done our jobs. That's what my feeling is, that it's heartening to see that how people are taking interest in this whole process, how they are putting their own bids and encouraging others to contribute in this whole journey. So this is like a journey where we have started to do our bids there. But we are somewhere in the middle. We still have to go a long way.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So all the best with that. That's what I understand.
And I think if we reflect on that word journey, so back in 2019 when we launched this entire program at Bayview High School, the emotional well-being program, what we do see is that this journey has actually not only grown for us as a school, as a system, but we are seeing other schools kind of, come into this process as well and taking mental health as a dialogue in day-to-day practices when it comes to children and their caregivers. So Fatma, if you could share your perspective on this.
Absolutely, Amna. I would agree with you with regards to how more and more schools are taking on the impact that mental health has, or the impact of understanding the importance of mental health on children, on parents, on all of the stakeholders in that process. And they're trying to make ways for the school to be the start of having a more healthier mental health in the future. So understanding that when a child comes to school, they're not only there for the purpose of being educated or getting the curriculum across, they're also there as a whole person. And that whole person has many other needs, one of them being their social needs and their emotional needs. Honestly, very pleased to be working at a school where compassion, courage, looking at the child as the guider to the process. It's very heartening to see that happening at school.
And looking at them as a whole, it's not just academics or it's just not about making friends. It's like we are able to see a child as a whole where they have so many other elements, part of their development as they're growing across the years. So I think you've put that beautifully, that it's so important for us to reflect on all areas of a child.
And to also understand the importance of a parent in that role. So not just, the child is not the only person who's in the school. It's a partnership between the parent, the child, and the school admin, teachers, all of them. So understanding that it goes not just isolated school, hey, and that's
exactly
home. It's a partnership that we're all in.
It's a triangular relationship. What we understand is that we have parents who become the primary caregivers in the home environment, whereas we have the school, the teachers, the staff that they interact with on a daily basis for half the day. So that's another primary caregiving institution, and they both have their significance, absolutely. So Dr. Zainab, if I can ask you, what do you think is the role of a caregiver, especially when it comes to communicating with a child?
That's a very interesting question, because when we think of a caregiver or parent, we think that they are the providers, they are to nurture. And what we forget is the very important ingredient or essence in that, which is of building relationship, being able to present themselves as a role model. So they are educators, they are mentors, they are the children's friend, but at the same time, they are the people who are contributing in personality development of their child. So most of the time, it is felt that parents are to provide, they are providers, they have to feed their child, they have to provide with all other necessities in life, but that emotional aspect, that it's like giving your child an opportunity to learn and educate and be, not be illiterate but literate. But when it comes to emotional literacy of the child, we see very less contribution in this. Why we see less contribution in this is because people are not aware that what they say has an impact on their children. Youngsters or even adults, what you tell them, what you say to them, that has a greater impact on their feelings, on their emotions and their behavior. Effective communication is very powerful. The role of emotional literacy or emotional education through communication becomes very essential to be understood. Why? Because as I said, communication starts with listening to the child. So if you're there to listen to your child, to give that attention which your child requires, you've actually done your job, which means that you're validating the child's presence, you're acknowledging the emotions, and there where you lay a foundation for trust and relationship building. And that could only be done with words, by just saying, I love you. You can make mistakes and that's fine.
And it's something so simple, you know?
Yeah. So just being simple in communication, not being too critical in our talks, and be little conscious in what you're saying to your child can make a lot of difference.
And if I can ask you to reflect on how playing with your child, when we talk about play, so I understand that we see play as something what a child is meant to do, but can parents and caregivers utilize play as a foundation of building that communication with them?
Yeah, because play is the way through, it's the medium through which child communicates. That's the way we communicate through words, but for young people, communication through play is easier because it's their tool to connect with the world.
Exactly.
So if parents use this medium to connect with their child and provide them with an opportunity for learning through play, it will have a long-lasting impact. Why? Because any important rule or discipline or anything that they want to introduce to their child will be introduced in a very friendly manner, which is they provide the child with a space and opportunity to be there, understand it, question it, plus at the same time be playful in that and not take a lot of stress related to that. So it's the power of play that provides an opportunity for growth, healing,
connection,
talking about fears, and connection,
and
connection and building relationships.
That's so true that when we want to give an instruction, let's say to a child to do anything, when it is communicated more playfully, they receive it more. But I do understand that it can vary from each parent to parent. So Fatima, if I can ask you a question, that what role do you think a parenting style will have on this form of communication? What Dr. Zainab just very eloquently put together. But do you feel that the different and the varied parenting styles can have an impact on its outcome?
Absolutely. So if you look at parenting isn't static. It has evolved over time, right? So the way that our parents were parented or the way that we were parented is different from how we're parenting or this generation is parenting their kids. And as Dr. Zadeh mentioned, she used the word conscious. We're more conscious of how we're parenting and we're more respectful with how we're parenting. So there's a lot of reflection on emotions. Now, while in the past there was a lot of emphasis on rules and the parent was a person of, I'd say, authority. Parents are still in a position of authority right now, but then they're also a lot more aware of the emotions and how emotions play a part in communicating effectively with a child. So they're more, I feel like while rules may be stated, they're also going to reflect on the emotion that a child might be feeling. All right, we need to leave the park and I know that makes you sad. So we're leaving the park, it makes you sad, but I would like you to either hold my hand and walk to the car or I can lift you up and take you to the car. So I feel like that's the shift that's happened. The way we verbalize things to our kids these days is different from how it was in the past, and that builds on how much your child will also trust you.
And if you just allow me to add one point here, we feel that we are born parents. If you are, you don't have to learn that. But what is important to be understood in this whole process is that it's a set of skills that are to be learned. Why? Because if you've given this responsibility to parent someone, it doesn't mean that you know everything. Maybe your parenting itself was not that healthy, or you didn't experience things. You carry that baggage. Maybe you'll keep on having that spillover effect on your child. So what I just wanted to emphasize here, that it's a set of skills that need to be learned, and we don't pay attention to that as well. So it's an important area to be accepted by us as a society, that training classes for parents and parenting is something that needs to be encouraged.
Parental guidance, I think, is a beautiful process that when parents we've seen go through them, the feedback that we actually have received is that worked, and that idea seemed so simplistic, but it worked wonders. So we do agree that this is something we can encourage further, that for caregivers, it's okay if you're stuck. It's okay if you feel like you're stumbling in this. Nobody gave us a cookbook or a manual that, okay, this is how to parent. You're learning as it's going. So I think that's very well said.
और हमारे यहाँ तो ये भी रिवाज है ना, if your mother-in-law or anyone is telling you what to do, I am the mother. I don't need to be told by anyone. We've forgotten that at times, even it's something related to yourself. It's not about anyone else. At that point in life as well, you might need suggestion or advice from someone, or just somebody be there for you who you can speak to. And at times problem solves there. But the resistance or hesitancy that we have in this process of connection again, to get support,
to receive that
in this, is something which is...
And I think sometimes what people forget is that you do have a choice. So when you're hearing someone, like the example you gave, when a family member might reflect on, anything that is supportive, but it's received in a whole other connotation. And what we more often than not forget is you do have choices when it comes to your child, and your child has choices as well that you're modeling for them.
You see, it's about modern way of teaching, where you have to allow yourself to be open to ideas, not be too
rigid
in your approach, and not be too resistant to the ideas which are coming in. By when you say the idea of you have choices, this means that you approach things with an open mind, to have those options for you and your child and your family, and then pick what is best for you and move on in life. So yeah, that's a good point raised, and I think that'll be beneficial for the audience as well.
I 100% agree.
I'd also like to add at this point that when we talk about learning, Dr. Zadeh mentioned learning how to parent. Not everyone's born a parent. There's so much more resource available, even if it's not joining a parent training program. It could be something as simple as opening Instagram, and then all of these pages that have popped up that have these very general situations that they're describing, but they're relevant to everyone. Those examples and the script that they provide you, they can be like a guideline for you to follow, and they're so readily available.
Absolutely, and that's a very good point, that the age that we live in is the digital age, and even this platform here is, helping caregivers digitally through this virtual platform understand that we are here to give you those tools, those resources that essentially you can do this. So now I would love to shift gears into something fun. So let's kind of reflect on, earlier we were talking about that there are different parenting styles. So if we can, before we get into the actual segment, if we can talk about what are the different styles. So would anybody like to reflect on them?
Let me start with talking about two parenting styles first, and then we can go in the deeper discussion. One is authoritarian parenting, which we refer to as a strict way of parenting. The strict way here I mean कि वो होता है ना गलत किया है. You never provide an explanation to your child what you mean by क्या गलत हुआ है, what was wrong, and if the child questions what was wrong, बदतमीजी है, you're misbehaving. So the child never gets the idea that the disciplining that you're introducing, what is the logic or reason behind it, and you always approached in a way which is of what we call as an Hitlerian way of doing things, right? So this is what we call authoritarian parenting. Authoritative parenting is more of a democratic style, where you approach your child as somebody who has space to do things and function, but at the same time you offer boundaries to that so that the child knows where to stop and where to start. Starting with an idea that authority comes before nurturance. So you're there to provide all love and support to your child, but at the same time, you are to be there to tell the child, this is where your space is, and that's where right and wrong starts, and that's where your boundaries are. If your child asks, hey, I want to go for party overnight, or I want to do this, ye cheez nikalni hai, wo karna hai, aisa kuch hai. So you just simply by conveying that I love you, but I don't think it's a good idea to do it this way. Right? So you conveyed an emotion, but at the same time, you provided a message to the child that you're not okay with it. And when you say, I don't think, you've provided space for the discussion as well. So it's an example of being a parent who is actually maintaining the balance between where you want to be available to your child as a guide, but at the same time, you want the child have that independence to function in that space and avail that opportunity for growth.
So I guess one is more with the first one, the authoritarian. There's no meaning making that's essentially happening. The child doesn't even know what's going on. But in the latter, which is the authoritative, there is boundary, there are firm boundaries, but they are done in an emotionally safe way, that the child still feels held.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's how it is.
And Fatma, would you like to reflect on the others?
In one, there is warmth, but there's also guidelines. In the other, there are guidelines, but not a lot of warmth. And then comes permissive parenting, where there is a lot of warmth, but not enough guidelines. For instance, a child is approaching something that they would like to do, and the parent is always saying yes. So kind of saying yes parenting, where there aren't a lot of no's that are happening. What that leads to is there's not a lot of structure then, and that can lead to confusion. So this type of parenting doesn't necessarily mean that the child is going to be a very emotionally healthy child just because parent mana nahi karta hai koi cheez. Even then there can be confusion, and even then there can be triggers for a child that will sprout up.
Yeah.
And then there is neglectful parenting, where there is no warmth and there are no guidelines either. And that's the sort of parent that you might think of as a parent who doesn't know what time the child is supposed to be picked up from school. It can be a parent who it doesn't put any thought into the child's routine. So it's just
not a very aware parent.
Yeah.
That's what it sounds like. So it's like two extremes you're describing. One is either the parent is not just aware at all, and one is they're aware, but like you said, there's yes parenting. And you mentioned that there's always yes, yes, yes. There are no no's. But also being mindful that when a no comes, then what? Because the child's not attuned to that. All right, so since we've reflected on these, 4 types of parenting, let's do something fun. I'm going to play this game with you called Who Am I?
So you have to answer something?
Yes.
It's a test?
Yes, it's a quiz. So imagine I'm going to give you a few scenarios.
Oh, that's stressful.
Yeah, so I'm going to give you a few scenarios, and I'll be quick with it. It's like a little bit of a rapid fire.
Oh, that's more stressful. So it's about time and accuracy.
And yes, and
we
who
don't
answers first?
We don't have
That's
a coffee
so you being
hamper.
teacher.
Not teacher, but like someone like moderating this. But I want you to have fun with it. Let's imagine it's still fun, even in the stress. Yeah, let's model that also. That stress may be fun ho sakta hai.
Bilkul ho sakta hai.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to give you 5 scenarios, and I'll give you choices. And the first one who answers gets it.
Oh, that makes me feel better. I'll get choices. That's great.
All right. So the first one is, I'm a parent who works tirelessly all day at home, and each time my child cries, I give him a phone to watch videos for as long as he wants. And now he doesn't listen to me when I ask him to reduce his screen time. Usually he ends up having an emotional outburst, so I again give him the phone. What type of parenting style do I have? Neglectful? Permissive?
Permissive?
Yes. Okay, next. I'm a parent whose child is scared of me because the minute he makes a mistake, he is reprimanded. And when he cries, he gets upset. And he is told to be a man and not to cry. What type of parenting style do I have? Yes. So authoritative, authoritarian. Anyone?
Authoritarian.
Authoritarian. Okay, she'll get it.
So I gave the answer first.
I was following the rules. I was doing
She
ding
followed
ding.
the rules. Okay, so we'll go with her. So it's 1-1. All right. I'm a parent who works long hours, and when I come home late at night, my child has already slept. I provide food, luxury, everything else to my family, but sometimes it takes days for me to properly spend time with my child. What type of parenting style do I have? Permissive or neglectful?
Neglectful.
Very good. Okay, 2-1. I'm a parent who likes a routine to be followed. For that, I sit with my child and make a schedule keeping his needs in mind and considering his opinions so that he is involved in the decision-making process as well as he has a choice in his day-to-day activities. What type of parenting style do I have? Okay, so you didn't even need choices. All right, 2-all. This is the tiebreaker. I'm a parent who has a tiring job, so when I come home, I want things placed where I want them to be. I talk or play with my children, but when I want. I always miss my children's school events because I'm too busy to attend, so I ask my spouse to do it on my behalf. What type of parenting style do I have? Authoritative or authoritarian?
Authoritarian.
All right, so Fatima, you take it. So it's 3-2.
Okay.
Pats on the back.
We have been taught by the best as well, right here. But thank you so much. So this was just a fun tidbit to see how, there are so many scenarios when we imagine ourselves in a position like that. These terms, authoritative, authoritarian, they just seem, big words. But we actually do see them around us all the time. So Fatima, if I can ask you that out of these that we just discussed, which one do you think is the most effective type of parenting style? Let's help our viewers understand that if we're talking about all these styles, which is the most effective that maybe they can take on?
Amna, while a lot of research suggests that the authoritative parenting style is the best parenting style that is out there, but at the same time I feel like there's research that's also pointing in that direction, that it is important to be fluid with the way that you are in a certain situation. So while you might be more of an authoritative parent, there might be situations that might arise which require you to be a permissive parent. For instance, you have a sick child at home, and while you have a rule that says junk food on the weekend, but if that's the only thing that they're eating, you might allow them that leverage in that situation. So I feel like sometimes parents go between both permissive and authoritative, depending on what the situation might require.
That makes a lot of sense. It's almost like, let's not look at parenting like 2 boxes or 3 boxes that we can fit ourselves in, but it's meant to be fluid, like you said, to kind of move across depending on the different situations we find ourselves in.
Absolutely.
So just adding one thing here, so what I understand is there is nothing like perfect parenting anyone is aware of, right? So you don't have to worry about being a perfect parent. You have to keep on trying to get into different styles, and that's what makes you a good parent.
I would ask, like Dr. Zainab, if I can ask you, that when it does come to parenting, I understand it's hard and communication barriers, because communication is, like we discussed earlier, the foundation for so much. The barriers are there, but if parents could be, or caregivers, it could include teachers and grandparents or aunts and uncles, all caregivers, what can they do to eliminate these barriers? How can they improve that, that communication channel with their kids?
Long ago, the 2 twin brothers in a class, and a teacher used to say, you land up in a hospital, you land up in a hospital. So the words or sentences that are being told to children have that much impact that they live their life according to the script that they receive from elders around them, especially parents, teachers, and their caretakers. So what happened was, because these 2 were told that you land up in hospital, you land up in hospital, one became doctor when he grew up and the other landed in a rehab center. So this is how impact of the words and the statements that we make to our children has an impact which needs to be given some time, importance and value. So that's how we can actually work on our communication skills by giving some time to what we say, being conscious of that, being conscious of our body language and giving quality time. But you don't have to be very judgmental about what you're doing. If you're judging and trying to go by book, then there is no charm in that. You need to be genuine in that connection. So always remember, while using all these ingredients, the topmost thing is the building up of relationship. Anything goes in the favor of you being able to build up a contact with your child, connection, relationship, that will always end up in something which is helpful and fruitful.
And I think one thing that really helps in that connection building is, if I can add to that, is, when you were saying that attend to your child, one thing that's really helpful is when we kind of come down to their eye level. you know, when we're talking to a child, more often than not, it's because obviously we're taller, we're bigger, it's this. But what we notice is when a child is, you know, you come down to their level, you're sitting with them, be it on the floor or, you know, any furniture, it automatically builds that connection, consciously and unconsciously. So I think what you're seeing, if I visualize it, a parent doing that and just being at the same level of the child. I think that's what came up. That was literally the vision in my head when you were saying this.
Yeah, exactly. It's not. Yeah, so you picked up well.
Thank you so much. But I think the one last thing, Fatma, I would love your insight on this. That, you know, we've been talking about parents, caregivers, you know, the home environment. But when we said that one of the other primary caregiving institutions is the school, the education system that a child belongs to. As educators, if you can, you know, help us understand, and of course that can overlap parents and, you know, the home environment as well, what can the caregivers do to take care of their own mental health and well-being, as well as nurturing the mental health of their students or their children? Because we do understand there is a connection, there's a very strong connection of how we are versus how they will feel in our presence. So if you could shed some light on that notion as well.
So there's a thing called vibe, and children pick up that vibe, right? This is something that I was told when I had my little one, and I was told that, you know, how calm you are around her will translate into how she's gonna respond to you as well. And I feel like that translates in us as people with anyone we're around. So however, if we're in a good headspace, that vibe is going to translate. And that brings me to saying that teachers really need to prioritize their mental health, because they're being entrusted with the lives of 24 for a year, right? 24 to take care of in a classroom. One of the ways of doing that is establishing boundaries. For instance, not taking work home or unless like absolutely required, or establishing boundaries with parents with regards to like the timings that they can reach out to you, talking to a friend or a colleague, or asking for extra support when you require. And then if you are still feeling anxious or depressed or burnt out, seeking help too. Because if
professional help. Yeah.
Because if you take care of your headspace, you'll be able to take care of the headspace of little children that are entrusted to you.
And I loved that parallel that you drew, that you're not just, you know, someone who's an educator and working with the well-being and mental health of your students, but you're also a parent. So what I loved about your answer is that you're reflecting on both sides of it. Being a parent, being a caregiver, being entrusted with the upbringing of your own children, as well as the ones, you know, within the school realm. So I love that. I think our viewers can take away both aspects of this from what you've just shared. So thank you so much for sharing that moment with us. And thank you so much, Dr. Zainab, for your insights. And it's always wonderful to hear, you know, different opinions, different perspectives, because that's exactly what we need to do. We need to be the ones to talk about it. We need to be the ones to model to the younger generation that this is something worth investing our time, our energy in, because without this, everything else kind of falls apart. So thank you so much for helping us kind of further this dialogue. And I'm really hopeful that, you know, everyone watching can have some moments of takeaway. So thank you so much for everything.
A verse popped in my mind, and I wanted to just share that, so
I
that
would love that.
It'll be like something for me to you know, feel more of myself. वो है ना, ताल्लुक टूट जाने से सफीने डूब जाते हैं. If relationships are lost, your boat will sink. That actually carries a lot of meaning with whatever you say. Communication, all that skills that we've been talking about, if that doesn't lead to you being able to build relationship with your child, it will actually not have that impact which we want, that you know, that positive impact, that healthy impact that could lead to this child's healthy growth of personality. So thank you very much for the invite.
Thank you so much, Dr. Zainab. Thank you so much, Fatma, for joining us today. I think your presence and the insights that you've brought in, they truly mean a lot to us. So thank you so much.
Thanks for the invite.
Thank you so much, Amna. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much. So viewers, I hope that you were genuinely able to enjoy this episode because I had a blast. I feel that it was not only fun, but there were so many important aspects that we can take away from what was discussed today. And I think the main thing that I would want to reflect on as like a summary note is, it's okay if as parents you feel there's a lot going on, that you have your own unique style as a parent. But what we must remind ourselves is that at the end of the day, it's something we can learn, it's something we can grow into, and I guess it takes a village. So building that community as well that can help you grow into the parent that your child needs you to be. All right. Thank you so much.